Anyone who's been watching my channel for a while knows I love trucks, and it has not started recently. It's gone back since, well, I first was looking at starting to drive, and even way before that. I was a little kid getting into my dad's trucks and driving around with boats and other trailers behind me and moving people's stuff because we had trailers. It started way back then, and it's still going on. And I want to discuss Powerwagon versus Tremor, because I see all the time people wondering, what should I buy? Well, this is the video for you if you are deciding between Powerwagon and Tremor. So if you're new here, I bought and ordered in 2017 a Powerwagon, and I really, really loved it. It is a unbelievably capable off-road vehicle. When you look underneath it, the underbody protection is ridiculous. The factory lockers are really good to have, and the factory winch, again, unbelievable. Strong driveline, excellent water fording performance, excellent flex thanks to that fancy articulating link they have for the radius arm, and the suspension's really soft, plush, flexy capabilities, and the disconnecting sway bar. As a OEM package, you cannot buy anything better as long as you don't want a diesel. If you're buying gas, Powerwagon it is, baby. Maximum off-road factory performance. I have nothing but fond memories and appreciation for how much I loved my truck. Where it fell on its face was towing in general. It did a good job towing, but it didn't hold speed very well on the road or on grades with even smaller trailers and not heavy grades. The fuel range was absolutely terrible. The 6.4 is really an outdated platform. And my 66 RFE that was in the 2018 and back Powerwagons was simply not that great of a trans. It did the job, but any Powerwagon owner you talk to that has 100 and 125,000 miles on the truck, they're either probably having troubles with the 66 RFE or they've already had it rebuilt. And that's not really a good thing. In 2019, they got the ZF8, and I have raved about the ZF8 on this channel. I've driven many different vehicles of different sizes and shapes with the ZF8, including a 6.4 Ram with the ZF8. It is a huge, unbelievable upgrade. If you're buying a new Powerwagon, you get the ZF8. It is a amazing transmission, and it makes the truck much, much better. So let me take you back a really long time ago to a back 40 that a close farming friend of ours, a farmer, had, and he had all kinds of toys on his property. He had Broncos and side-by-sides, four-wheelers. He was a cool guy, and one of my buddies was very close friends with him and did a little bit of work on his farm here and there, and we used to go and hang out with him. He had a really cool back 40 pond with pontoon boat and all kinds of stuff, and then kind of like a double wide, but it wasn't a double wide. It was literally like a small cabin with a pool table, ping pong table, a bar. It was such a cool hangout place in the middle of his farm. So there was like 600 acres around us of places to wheel. He had trails all through it. It was such a cool thing. The photo that you're looking at right now is my Powerwagon, darn near parked up right at the door. It's an example of the Powerwagon being something very, very special. In that picture are a Chevy 1500 on mud tires and an older GMT 400 3/4 ton also on mud tires. They only made it that far, and then there was a Ram 1500 there too on mud tires. They only made it up the hill that far. My Powerwagon drove right up there and parked up there on the hill. Words can't describe. Well, this was fall. It had just poured down rain. It was soupy. It was absolutely terrible. And the Powerwagon showed its absolute dominance compared to other vehicles, which performed and known to perform very, very well off-road. The Powerwagon was stock. It is a crowd pleaser, and in fact, without pointing any names or whatever, I was told, don't bring your cookie cutter truck to my mud bog anymore with this truck. It made mud trucks look very stupid on 33-inch mud tires because of its off-road capability. We'll just put it that way. It is a truck that you can go buy at the dealer right now. You could pay cash, you take a loan for it, whatever the heck you're going to do, and you're going to immediately have a better performing off-road truck than basically anyone else unless they have a fully built rig. I can't say enough positive things about the Powerwagon. So now that we got off-road performance and dominance out of the way, let's talk about towing. It's on the 2500 platform. It has the 5-link rear suspension, which I really like. My dad's 2500 Cummins has obviously stiffer coils, but it's the same rear suspension. I like how it tows. It's very stable, works incredibly well. I like it, or I liked it. Where it lacked, like I said, is the 6.4, which hasn't changed since 2014. It's been the exact same engine. And here's one kicker that I just found out. It couldn't pass emissions for 25, so they knocked 5 horse off of its rating, and it was already kind of a class, I mean, it is a class loser right now. They knocked 5 horse off its rating because it can't pass emissions. And I've already made a video talking about what I think Ram should be doing in the future with their vehicles. And for sure, a new engine in this truck would make a huge difference. Go check that video out. We talk about the new Cummins Octane, turbocharged inline-6 dual overhead cam, really cool heavy-duty work engine. And then me speculating about how awesome it'd be to have a 426 and a 440 wedge motor that they would build for trucks and for cars. I think that would be just so cool. I'm very excited about that. Even though I don't know if it'll ever happen. Check out that video if you'd like to. The Powerwagon with a new engine would make a big difference. As it sits, because of both the GVWR limitations of the axles, which actually come from the differentials. The differentials aren't rated for the amount of load that it would be to tow heavy stuff. It's really the differentials that kind of limit the truck. Same axles underneath the truck as you would get on any 2500. And it has 410 gears, so it would be the better gear set for towing. So it's already pretty well equipped functionally. Got to be careful with the front, especially the front locker on a Powerwagon. They are a lot less strong than, say, an aftermarket E&E locker. They're just not as strong of a locker, but they do very, very well. You just got to be a little bit careful with them. Towing dynamics-wise, as you can see, I was very comfortable towing things that were way over the weight rating for the truck. And payload-wise, obviously the Powerwagon is derated because of the flexi springs, but the truck underneath it is the same truck as the 2500. Many people go ahead and put airbags on Powerwagons and then use them just as they would anything else. Now, you need to understand, and perhaps we can have a discussion about this, and about GVWR, therefore Payload, and GCVWR, and where the ratings apply. Now, you almost need to consult with a DOT cop, or your attorney, really is who you should really be talking to, about this. I know the limitations of my vehicle. I know the handling dynamic limitations of the vehicle. I would never put myself or someone else in danger should choosing to do so. And just because I was towing over the weight rating and definitely had payload over the payload rating doesn't mean that you should too. However, the only way you find out the limitations of vehicles is to test them safely. And therefore, I can tell you that I tested the towing capability of the Powerwagon. It was very good. The 6.4's limitations are the need to downshift going up grades. And overall in the truck market in 2014, it was a pretty solid option. The 6.2 Boss was the Ford, they call it the 6.2 Boss. It was a good engine, good top-end power, good upper mid-range, didn't have the bottom end. It was a better towing engine than a 6.0 Chevy. This from someone who really likes the 6.0 Chevy platform. The LS platform is absolutely wonderful. The Vortec iron block version of a LS engine is unbelievably strong, and the LY6 that is in the newer GMT 800 trucks, like what we're about to talk about, which would be a competitor, the 392, the big gas engine, 6.4 big gas, whatever you want to call it, it's 392. It is not the same as what is in the SRT cars. However, it had extremely good heads. Still has the Hellcat casting, both material and the process they used to cast the Hellcat heads. It had very good heads, very strong block. It is a very interesting engine. However, it just doesn't compare to when you have more cubic inches like the 7.3 gas, which we're going to talk about that stuff here in just a second. But the 6.4 held its own, and if you want maximum off-road capability, that is the platform you want, irregardless of the loss of power for 2025. And also, it just isn't the class-leading engine, and in fact, it really is the class-losing engine, but the whole truck is so good off-road, you should definitely consider it. Know that because of MDS, they have lifter issues in the long run. So instead of before where the 66 RFE was a concern in reliability, now the ZF8 isn't a concern in reliability, but the 6.4 is still the exact same concern in long-term reliability. Most people that I've ever talked to, 125, 150,000 miles, 6.4s end up getting replaced because they're shot. They have lifter failure. They have to wipe the cams so the lifters just fail, or both happen at the same time. Generally, bottom end failures are not a thing on 6.4 as long as you change the oil. They're incredibly reliable. It is a It is an MDS issue. The multiple displacement system runs on 4 cylinders. I wish it didn't exist. Sure, it helps with fuel economy when it works. If you're towing, it does not work, or it won't help you. When you're empty, if you're going too fast, or if you have a headwind, it won't go into MDS mode. It sounds really weird when it's running on 4 cylinders. It's just not ideal, but again, it's what you get to get the Powerwagon, and the Ram engineers did it right. The Powerwagon has always been a top dog off-road competitor, and therefore, as you can tell, I love the Powerwagon and have a huge deal of respect. So I never want to try and turn you away from the Powerwagon if this truck is for you. And I guess just to finish off, this truck is for you if you don't need to have max payload or max towing, or if you're towing bigger things, short distances on flat land, you're going to do just fine with the Powerwagon, and then it's going to do incredible off-road when you're empty. It is a good platform to use as a, quote, overlanding vehicle because you can put a lot more stuff on a Powerwagon than you can commonly a smaller off-road vehicle, a Jeep, a Gladiator, a Tacoma, things like that, a 4Runner. The Powerwagon has more capability than those, but the Powerwagon does not have more capability than an HD truck, and in some cases, a 1500 series truck, even though the Powerwagon is so much stronger, so much more capable. It doesn't have the rated payload, and by nature, you're going to see more sag of the rear end of the vehicle when you put structures on the back of it to put your rooftop tent and all your gear and sliding the deck things. There's just so many great products on the market, whether you're a working class person or whether you're a hunter or you're outdoorsing and things like that. There's the deck stuff, the Diamondback truck cover, and the different types of like ladder rack designs that can be used to put canoes and kayaks and rooftop tents. There's just a litany of things that you can do with an HD truck, and that's why they're so awesome. And we're going to talk here about what I think is a good compromise for those who need to have more towing and more payload capability for their overlanding setup or off-roading setup, but maybe don't need to have the maximum off-road performance, and that's where the Tremor comes in. Let's talk super quickly about where the 6.4 stacks up in towing performance in terms of the gas engine market. It's going to out-tow a 5.4 2V without really too much trouble, and it's going to tow with or better, especially in top-end horsepower, to a 3V 5.4 without any trouble. A 2V V10 is going to out-tow the 6.4 in terms of holding speed on a grade. However, the 6.4 is going to get up to speed faster because it has a lot more horsepower. The exact same thing occurs with the 3V V10. I've towed with them. I've driven with them. They're just not the hype that I think that they get given. The little bit of extra power they have over the 2V is really not that much. If you put as we talked about on this channel before, a 3-inch Y pipe and a tune on a V10 or a 2V V10, it really comes alive, and it doesn't have anything any loss compared to the 3V. The 5-speed doesn't really make a huge difference at all. There is a bigger transmission cooler on the 5-speed transmission. It's just that the 3V isn't that big of a deal. It's newer. It's got a way better frame, way bigger brakes, way bigger axles. The whole truck is better than the previous setup, but the 2V certainly isn't something to scoff down at. The 6.4 easily out accelerates it when empty, and it's going to probably get up the speed faster. Like I said, where the V10 shines is the fuel economy when towing. Believe it or not, they really hold their own when you put a lot of load behind them. They don't lose a ton of fuel economy when you're loading them up, and the holding of speed going up grades is fantastic, and it should have a little bit more engine braking. 6.0 Chevy, easily the 6.4 out-tows a LQ4 in stock condition. When you properly tune a LQ4, an aluminum-headed LQ4, so 01 to 07, they really come alive, and you'd be really surprised where my LQ4 stacks up compared to my Powerwagon. My LQ4 was, believe it or not, way faster in a drag race than my Powerwagon, side by side, both 410 gear, both on 33s. My 6.0 was way faster once it was tuned, and a couple of little exhaust modifications. Towing-wise, the 6.4 has a little bit stronger bottom end. It has 6 gears, so the first gear helps you out a little bit. Double overdrive helps again a little bit more. So it's a good overall powertrain, but when you can modify a 6.0 to be faster for sure and tow nearly as well as a stock 6.4. Now let's talk about a rectangular port 6.0. The picture of this truck has a rectangular port 6.0, an LY6. It is a very strong engine. The 6.4 has more top end, and it has more top mid-range and it has more bottom end. The 6.0 has a very strong lower mid-range where it comes in, and then it's going to get beat out for sure top end by the 392, the 6.4. See, I keep calling it interchangeably. The 6.0 fares really well with those older engines, and we've already sort of mentioned the 6.2 Ford. Again, the 6.4 is a strong competitor to the 6.2. Enter into the chat the new 6.8 V8 gas engine that Ford has and the new 7.3 gas. Both of these engines trounce the 6.4 in terms of bottom end torque, lower mid-range, upper mid-range, top end power. They're all going to kill it. Very, very strong engine. Oh, we forgot the 8.1. Just like the V10, the 8.1 has a really strong bottom and lower mid-range. Starts to lose a little bit in upper mid-range to top end. The 6.4 will be faster in a drag race. The 6.4 will probably get up to speed faster, but an 8.1 will probably hold a grade better or hold wind, just like a V10. If you got a lot of wind and you're going to hold gear, I think better with an 8.1 and a V10 to a 6.4. So it competes very strongly with older engines. When it came out in 2014, it was a very strong engine. It's now 11 years old and hasn't had any modification. In fact, it lost power, as we already said. I think it's very unfortunate. So, and also the 6.6 Chevy easily has more bottom end, lower mid-range, upper mid-range, and more top end to the 6.4. It is currently a class loser. However, in its time, it was a very strong competitor in the heavy-duty gas market. It was a really good engine when it came out. So I think it's unfortunate that they haven't evolved the platform at all. And that kind of has been the case with the 5.7 Hemi too. It's kind of the 5.7 Eagle was the last update to the 5.7 Hemi. We haven't gotten anything since. And that was a really long time ago, more than 10 years ago. So very unfortunate that Ram hasn't really looked into upping the performance potential or the displacement of the engine. If they would put a 6.4 into a half ton and have that be the replacement for the 5.7, that would be huge. It would be an excellent gas towing engine. They could totally have that as a class-leading, potentially, option. But the 6.4 definitely needs refinement and revisement to be a competitor in the towing sphere of this conversation. All right, it's Tremor time. This is my friend Ryan's Tremor. It is absolutely delicious in appearance. The Tremor really fills the gap with more payload, more towing capacity, and only a slight loss from an equivalent 350 pickup truck. You're usually looking at about 3,000 pounds of total loss of towing capability and a couple hundred pounds of payload versus, say, my F350 7.3 gas or an equivalent diesel version of my F350 non-Tremor. So they have usually a 10,200 pound gooseneck fifth wheel and conventional hitch towing capacity because the truck is limited because of the spring rate of the truck. The GCVWR is artificially dropped compared to what the axles are rated for and what the tire size, the brake size, cooling capacity, all that good stuff. The truck is derated, but 8,000 or 18,200 pounds, excuse my stuttering there, is a huge number. I highly doubt the majority of you guys are going to outload the Tremor. His Tremor has something like a 4,118 pound payload, if I remember correctly. His is a 350 HO Power Stroke Tremor Lariat, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty highly optioned truck. So again, very few people are going to struggle with that. Most 40-foot fifth wheels are right around that 2,800 pound mark. He's still got plenty of room for 2 dogs, a family, some gear, some totes, and, some fuel cans. Like, he would go and do a whole weekend with a 40-foot fifth wheel, and he'd be good to go. So if you need that extra payload, get the 350 Tremor and get that extra, which is more than double my Powerwagon. My Powerwagon only had like an 1,873 pound payload, if I'm not mistaken. It was a little bit lame. It was like a little bit less than 200 pounds less than my 2019 F250 diesel, which, as everybody knows, a 10,000 pound rated GVWR F250 diesel is going to have a lot lower payload. At the time I bought the truck, I didn't need to have more than that. It more than satisfied the powerboat and the sailboat and the big car trailer. So the majority of you guys with an F350 diesel Tremor are certainly not going to be too little truck for what you're doing. So don't let that steer you away. That is where the Tremor shines. Big payload, big rated towing capacity. You can tow your big fifth wheel, your big boat, your whatever the heck, your car trailer. You're going to really do a solid job. What else do you get for your money? You get a 1.5-inch lift. You get 18-inch wheels. You get 35-inch tires. Now, they're a little bit skinnier than a 12.5, but they're still a very solid 35-inch tire with enough tread width to distribute the weight of the truck onto the ground. They also have a Torsen front differential. Now, I have very much a not love but hate history with helical gear limited slip differentials. It is a very similar design to the True Track. It is a very similar design to the Auburn clutchless LSD that is found on Ram trucks and has been for decades. So a helical gear limited slip differential, instead of having clutches to accomplish the limited slip portion, it has a series of gears which in theory don't allow open differential action. That's how they market it. However, in actual fact, they require, and when you question them as in the manufacturer closely as to how their diff performs, they don't want to say this in marketing materials. It's a little bit misleading, and I've seen a couple call this design a locker. No, True Track is not a locker. It requires resistance on both tires to have limited slip capabilities. That doesn't mean that 50-50 torque is going to either tire. In order for any limited slip action to be going on, it requires substantial resistance on both tires. If you have a tire in a mud hole and one on gravel, it's going to spin the mud hole tire. If you have a tire in the air, it's going to spin the tire in the air. You're going to be just as stuck as if you had an open differential. Now, because the Tremor and all of Super Duties have a rear locker, the addition of a front limited slip, in this case, much like the Raptor has usually a front limited slip, at least after, 2011 they got that, or 2012, it's going to generally positively impact the truck's performance off-road. It is not a locker. It is not comparative to a Powerwagon with a front locker. However, I think it's worth buying. Here's the reason. 23 plus, you only have, other than F450, the M235 front axle. There is no aftermarket support for this front axle. You can't put a front locker into a non-Tremor. You can't change gears in front or rear axle right now. I'm sure there will be axle support for rebuilds and differentials at some point. However, the Sterling 11.6 and the M235 are too new for there to be any aftermarket. If you break one, you have to bring it to the dealer. There's no other options. These are proprietary components that Dana is not sending to any Dana representative at Ring and Pinion Shop. I have been in continual conversation with my Ring and Pinion Shop. They are a Dana supplier. They have a very strong relationship with Dana. There is no aftermarket support for the M235 front axle. So if you want to do the next level up of off-roading, short of doing a Dana Super 60 axle swap from 22 and back, your only option is to just get the Tremor. So that, I think, is the best reason to buy the Tremor over a non-Tremor Super Duty. Before 2023, I would say to you, if you don't want to do mild off-roading with a little bit more clearance, some good-looking wheels and tires and whatnot, you should definitely buy a non-Tremor Super Duty and then upgrade that, because you get the same darn truck. You could put the front locker in the front, and you can put Tremor steps on it, or you can put rock sliders or whatever you're going to do. If you're going to change the lift, well, if you change the lift and the wheels and the tires, you kind of took away almost everything that the Tremor offers. You can still get the winch, or you can get the winch on any Super Duty. So that's not like the Powerwagon is in the Rebel, our winch specific trucks. In the Ford lineup, you can get the e-locker and the winch in all the Super Duties. So before 2023, I would say go buy the non-Tremor, save some money, put your money into a Carly kit, fancy wheels and tires for exactly how you want to use the truck. The best buyer of a Tremor, in my opinion, well, is someone who wants to have the best off-roading Ford truck that you can buy, but also someone who is going to use it for the way it was more or less spec'd. I wouldn't recommend buying a Tremor if you know you're going to change the wheels, the tires, the lift kit. You kind of took away the entire point of buying this truck. Should have just saved your money and then just built a non-Tremor. And if you're going to swap in a Dana 60 anyway, there's no point to pay extra for the Tremor except for the badge because you're going to entirely modify the suspension anyway to swap in a Dana 60 to put in a locker. I don't know of anybody doing that yet. That's something that I've looked at and will definitely do on my truck when it gets to the point of wanting to have a front locker, because I don't think there's going to be a front locker coming for M235 in a long time. But that is my 2 cents on that. The Powerwagon is definitely the king of off-roading. The Tremor is the queen of off-roading, which is a compliment because the queen is very important too. And it offers other capabilities that the Powerwagon doesn't, which is payload and towing capacity, and the diesel. That is an important thing too. If you want the range, if you want the speed holding on the hills, if you want the preservation of power at altitude, if you want the exhaust brake, you want the diesel. So, watch my other videos if you want to have more about comparing gas to diesel 7.3 to the 6.7. But both have their place. Both are very useful. In terms of in this truck, I think that a lot of people who are weekend warriors love having the diesel, and I've said this before, for the range and for the speed of getting themselves there on a Friday night and getting themselves home on Sunday night. The diesel lets you get up to speed a little bit faster. You can hold, wind doesn't affect you as much, grades don't slow you down as much. You'd be amazed if you have to cover ground and you're in a gas engine. And you gotta spend the time to either climb the grade a little bit slower because you're not holding speed, or maybe you floor it and then you're just beating the tar out of the truck. In other vehicles, maybe not the 7.3 gas, but you for sure are going to lose travel time when losing your speed going up the hill. And then coming down the hill, you may choose to slow down to 50 instead of doing 60 because you don't have an exhaust brake. Just to, err on the side of caution, keep your brakes a little bit cooler because you start off at a slower speed, or even 45. A lot of people crest a hill at 45 and then kind of let the speed slowly build up into the middle so that they get through half the grade without having to use their brakes hardly. And then the bottom half of the grade, they're a little bit more aggressive on keeping their speed down. There's different ways to come down grades with trailers. That's all something that we can talk about in later videos with a better conversation on that. I know that this video got long. I hope that you enjoyed my comparison between the Powerwagon and the Tremor. As you can tell, I'm excited about both these vehicles. They both have their place in the off-roading and into the truck sphere. If you have any questions about your specific application of whether you should consider one or the other, please comment down below. Irregardless, comment down below. Tell me how I did. Tell me if you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you're a Powerwagon or a Tremor owner, or if you're one of the two and looking to switch to the other one, or if you're a Powerwagon owner, and this is a common situation, you want to have a diesel, or you've had your uses changed to want to buy a diesel, in which case you may also want to Tremor. You may want to also consider the Rebel HD, which is only a 250, as we've talked about on this channel before, which I think is a little bit of a miss on Ram's part. The fact that you can get both a 3/4 ton and a 1 ton diesel and gas in a Tremor is a really awesome addition to an already capable product line. So Ford, I don't want to sound like too much of and I don't have any affiliation with Ford, but good job. They are sweet. The Tremors look really good in all the colors that they come in. So you can't go wrong with the Tremor. The Powerwagon, I someday will end up having a Powerwagon again. I miss my Powerwagon for its off-road capability and for the fact it was a Powerwagon. It is a cool truck. They've always been cool trucks, but they look even cooler with the cool badges on the side. I think really harkens back to the 70s. I really like the Powerwagon. I really like the Tremor. Both of these trucks fit different buyers incredibly well, and they are perfectly tailored for their intended buyers. If you accidentally pick the wrong one, which is why I made this video, to help you decide which one you are, if you pick the wrong one, I think you could easily be disappointed if you're looking for all-out off-road performance and then buy the Tremor, or if you're looking for balanced off-road performance with the towing and the payload, and then you select the Powerwagon, you may be feeling a little bit put out. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know, and we'll see you guys in the next one.